Hi there, welcome to the build of this lovely vintage model, the Gladiator. Now this is a real beast of a model that first appeared in 1941 in Air Trails magazine, and we're building this from a great set of plans that you can download from the Outer Zone website. And if you have a look in the description below this video, you'll find a link to those plans free of charge. Now, this is a great design, I really like it. It's got a really broad wing, tipped dihedral, a lovely long fuselage and a great big tailplane. Now, we got the tailplane built in the last video and we've got an elevator on that. And I mean, I've built models with smaller wingspans than this. I think this is about 31 inches. So it really is quite a good size. Now in this video, we're going to be building the fin, and we need to build in a rudder because originally this was free flight, but we're converting this to radio control. We're going to have 3 channels. We've got the elevator, we're going to have a rudder that we're going to put in, and we're going to have a throttle for a 4-stroke engine. We're also going to be building the tail skid here. Now, I don't think we'll be fitting the tail skid, but as we're down here doing this, we'll doing the fin, we'll do the skid as well, and we'll just have that ready for a later stage. We're going to be building this out of the lightest balsa. Now is the time to raid my balsa stash and find all those lovely light pieces I've been hanging on to, because the CG is here on this. I hope you can see it on the plans. There's very little up front. Everything is behind the CG. So we need to make this as light as possible. Now, once we've got this built, what we're going to be doing is looking in this video at how it's going to slot in to the tailplane and how it's going to be fixed. And then we'll do some work on the tailplane to hold that as well. So the first thing we need to do is have a look at preparing these outside edges from that lovely soft balsa. So this is how I'm going to do it. Right, well, this is a technique I use all the time for bits like this around this tail skid or the fin, where they're not intricate enough to use the process I did with the ribs, where you actually stick on a template with masking tape so it'll peel off. So we're not going to do that because it doesn't really warrant it, because they're quite simple pieces and there's a lot of leeway for error on these curves. You can leave them a bit bigger and then just sand them down. But what I do is I just draw the individual components out on a piece of tracing paper. So for example, number 7 that I've labelled down here, I just put it on there and just literally drew around it. Nice to get the straight lines right, but if the curve section, as I said, is a bit bigger and you'll end up leaving a little bit more balsa on, it doesn't matter because you'll sand it down to size anyway. And you can see these are bits that I used when I did the tailplane. So we've got all these pieces for the fin and the skid, and now what we're going to do is we'll do number 3 first, and I'll tell you what, let's do it like that. And so what you do is you just line it up on the balsa. Usually I put the straight edge on the edge of the balsa like that, and then I just hold it down and I use a T-pin, and we just move that and just go along and mark, put the pin, hopefully my hand isn't in the way, but I'm just sticking the pin through the tracing paper on the line that I've just drawn, or I'm just actually just on the outside of the line, and then we'll just go around and you can see all the holes. So I'll get this done. Okay, so now I've gone around with my pin and put a pinholes all the way around on the line where we need to cut. And if I take that off and we look at the balsa, you can see the outline of what we need to cut, and we just cut that out. It's as simple as that. It's a really good technique where you're not wanting high precision, such as I showed you earlier with the ribs. So you can see now I've got these components cut out. A real simple job, just took a few minutes, and you can still see the pin marks around the perimeter, which, you know, will give us something to sand to and help us when we're profiling it, I guess. So what I need to do now is get the plans on my balsa building board, and we'll get these stuck down or pinned down, and the fin and that skid built up. Right, well, I've got my plans stuck down on my flat building board. I've got some plastic on the top. I'm using this PVC free cling film. This is brilliant, and I'm quite pleased that it's not PVC. So I use that all the time to protect the plans. And there's a couple of things that I should say before we start building this up. Now, the leading edge here is 1/4 inch square. Now, the pieces that go around the side here, wherever they are 1/4 inch wide, and yet here in the centre we've got a 1/8 by 3/8. So here we go, and that is wider than 1/4 and 1/4 there. So I think this, there's not that much detail on the plan, but there's enough, and I think this is a centre point of the fin, and essentially we put in these pieces 3/8 wide, and then we taper them down from this centre point to the trailing edge and to the leading edge to create sort of an aerofoil type effect for the fin. So, or a, you know, symmetrical kind of aerofoil, if you like. So that's that. So if we take that as a centre point, we're going to build this up, and we're going to cut out a fin here. So we're going to build in a couple of pieces here and a piece across the bottom, and then we can cut that, cut it there, and the rudder, I think I might have just said fin, the rudder will come out and separate. Now you could say, well, why have you got this spar here when you're going to have another spar there? And the reason I want to keep that, because I did think about moving it further forward, but then it throws out that nice symmetrical kind of aerofoil type shape. So I want to leave that in as a reference for the sanding, and it's only a thin piece of balsa in the end. And then we can take this down. These pieces here will be the same thickness as that, but we'll take them down to the right profile when we shape all of this. Now I hope that makes sense. So we're almost ready to start building this up, and you'll see it take shape with these pieces here, and we won't cut these out, cut the rudder out of the fin until we've done all of the sanding and all of the shaping. Now, a couple of things about cutting. When I cut these out, I cut them by hand, and actually that isn't a particularly square 90-degree cut. And yet it's essential that we do get them 90 degrees. What I do is I put them on a sanding stick like that, and you can see that's not 90 degrees, that's cocked right over, whereas that one is. So what I do is I will put that on there. It obviously needs a little bit off that side, and I will just sand it and get it so it's nice and square. Almost there. I think it might be okay. Might need just a little bit off. I mean, you hardly have to touch it, just slide it. You saw the little amount I did to get that square. I think it needs just a little bit more off. I mean, balsa, this is really soft balsa. There, I think that's right. Now this is really soft balsa, and I'm using the softest balsa I can because we need to keep this light. So I'm going to do all those edges to make sure they're right. Now I need to cut this bottom piece, this 1 inch by 3/8, and wrong way round. There we go. I've got a cut to do there. Now I've marked that for the correct length it needs to be, so I don't want to go sanding that, so I want to try and cut that as square as I can. And what I often do when I want to get a really nice square cut first time, I mean, maybe you can do it, but I often find that it's not as square as perhaps I would like. I use a square block like this, and I know that's square. And what I do is I will just put the saw and start it, and then I will put the square block like that. Hopefully you can see that, and I will just use the square block as a guide to make sure that I'm keeping the saw at 90 degrees. And then hopefully, there we go. Hopefully now that is a nice square cut. Yes, it is. I can't, yeah, that is a nice square cut. Hopefully you can see that. I know it's a bit small in the camera. So what I will do is I'll get the rest of this cut and these sanded, and we'll start to get this pinned out first before we do any gluing. Right, well I've now got the 3/8 by 1 inch pinned down. I've got a slot in it, and I've got a piece of this 3/8 by 1/8 in there as that centre point that we talked about. I did notice that when I was pinning this down that the bottom of this wasn't quite flat. It was very slightly bowed, so I just put it on my sanding stick and just took a little bit off the centre, because at the end of the day this is going to glue down inside the centre of the tailplane here, and if we've got a slight curve we could end up introducing a little bit of a curve in the tailplane, and we really don't want to do that, so we need to make sure that is absolutely dead flat, which it is now. Now, okay, job done. What we can do now is we can start pinning out these pieces. I need to cut a slot in this for there, but we have to be aware that all the pieces we're going to put in now around the perimeter anyway, not in the centre but around the perimeter, are 1/4 inch. These are 3/8. So what we need to do is we need to lift them up and support them on some 1/16 like this, and that will then put them in the centre of this 3/8, so that when we sand them down on both sides we can bring it in to that 1/4. If we just put them there, we've got a 1/8 here, which is, so it's off centre, so it just doesn't make sense. So I've raided my scrap box, got lots of bits of 1/16 here, which I'm going to use to lift that up. So I'll get this pin now and then we'll have a look at gluing it. Right, well I've now got these pinned down, and we've got this bottom piece pinned down nice and solid, that's not going to move, and the same with this 1/4 inch leading edge. And you can see the 1/4, we've got it propped up on some 1/16, and the outside edge here we've got propped up on 1/16. Now in the main we've only got one pin, so that these will move a little bit, and you can see it's supported by 1/16. Now it might be that we end up sticking some of this 1/16 actually to the pieces, this outside edge. If it does, they'll come off easy enough, but I have put some plastic here just to separate them so it doesn't stick. But like I say, if a little bit sticks, it's no big deal. So what we're going to do now is we're going to go around this and build it up. And first thing we're going to do is just do this piece here, and I'm just going to pinch that nice and tight. Now I might stick to this to my finger, but hopefully not. If you do, you can always put a piece of plastic there and press the plastic if you don't like sticking yourself to your work. There we go. So now I'm just going to work my way around and do exactly the same thing. Make sure the piece is in the right place, like that is. Make sure I've got the right gap underneath. This is flush on the top here, and then I'm just going to pinch that and then super glue it. This is just thin CA. I'm just dabbing it at the moment, and we can put a little bit more on at a later stage if we think it needs it, that is. So this is nice and straight. Again, just going to pinch that joint there. Oops, make sure I don't push that out like I just did, and CA that. Right, just a couple of points. I've got this all glued around here now, and I'm starting to build up the area for the rudder. I've decided to put in 3/8 by 3/8 rather than a 1/4. It's really like balsa, there's nothing to it, but it'll give a more of an area for the hinge to secure into. I will still probably put a little bit more so to widen that up. I'll think about it, but I just thought 3/8 it would just make it that little bit stronger. Now I needed to cut this on an angle here, and so it would fit, and I've cut off too much, which is a bit annoying, but at the end of the day it's balsa. It's just so nice to work with. So I've just cut myself a little slither which I'm going to slot in there before I glue this end, and so I'll just slot that in there and I'll trim it. There we go. And now once this is finished and sanded, it will still have as much strength and you won't even notice it was like that. So we'll just get that CA'd. There we go. So I've now got these glued together. You can see I've got the skid here. I've just taken this off the board, and it's just the outside edge that will go on the bottom of the fuselage with a couple of pieces in between. I haven't done those pieces yet because they're kind of hourglass like this, and I'm not sure how that's going to work with the covering, but I still wouldn't put those on until I come to glue this to the fuselage, which will be probably quite a late stage in the build. Now we've got this on here and it's ready to come off. One thing I will say is I've got these uprights here, and this is for the back of the rudder, and I've actually glued that to the base of the fin here. If I hadn't got much sanding to do, I probably would have stopped it just shy of that, but I want this to be, the whole structure to be as rigid as possible. I don't want this being able to move in and out while I'm trying to sand it and profile it. So once I cut the fin out, I can just clean that up, but it will hold it all nice and secure like I said, why we're sanding it. So like I said, some of these bits of 1/16 will have probably stuck to it, but hopefully not too much. None of it. Okay. Brilliant. Really pleased with that. That is looking really nice, and you can see it's nice and flat, and we've got, I don't know whether it shows, but these pieces here are quite a bit wider because we need to start profiling this. So the next job I'm going to do is I'm going to trim this up a little bit just with a saw, and then I'm going to sand this outside profile and get that right first. Right, I've got the rough profile done. It is still going to need some more profiling on this outside edge, but it's roughly there. And what I've also done is I've just used a sanding stick to bring down those front pieces. It's just a 1/16 to come off to meet that 1/4 inch square at the front. And I don't know whether that kind of shows. And what I need to do now is just bring down the back. This I've just done the out, sort of the tips, if you like, the very front piece. This I will taper all the way from that central spar there, so I'll bring that right down and thin this right out. So it just wants some very careful sanding like this, and I'll go back outside and do that. And once we've got that done, we can have a look at fitting it to the tailplane. Right, I've now got this roughly to shape. There's still going to be some profiling, still need to do these edges here, round them off a little bit, and a little bit of thinning down. But these 3/8 wide pieces in the middle come down now to meet the 1/4, and I don't know how best to show this really, but hopefully you can see that and how it comes down smoothly to that bull nose at the front. Like I say, there's still going to be some finishing needed on this as well as on the actual shape itself. I think a little bit might need to come off the back just to shorten that a little bit. But what we're going to do now is we're going to have a look at how we're going to fit this to the tailplane. Right, so we've got the tailplane with the leading edge, the spars, and we need to fit the fin centrally obviously, and it needs to go over those spars like like that. So what I need to do first of all is mark those up so that this can be slotted into place. Once we've got it slotted into place, I need to give it some thought as to how I'm going to give some support so it doesn't wobble too much. But I'll get those spars marked up and cut out first, and then we'll have a look. Right, as you can see, I've now got that cut out and the fin slotted over those spars, and I've also cut off this back because once the elevator goes in, we're going to, once we've hinged this, we're going to stick that onto there like that, and there's a cutout in that which goes over the wire joining the two elevators. We did all that in the last video, and I think it was the last video. So now what we're going to do is, we've got that fitted, it's where it needs to be, but I've cut 2 more ribs. I've used the original rib template, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to slot these down either side of the fin. And originally I thought I could just brace it, and then I realised that I actually want to sheet this centre section where the elastic bands go. So we've got to have something on the inside here against this fin for the sheet to sit on, or it'll just be in mid-air. So we're going to put in these 2 ribs, and I'm not going to put them parallel. I'm going to get them so they follow the course of the fin, which actually curves in a little bit. I think so anyway. Yeah, I'm going to do that. So I will get this fin positioned in the right place, make sure it's central, and then we'll get these in and I'll get it sheeted. Right, well, I've got the sheeting on and the fin is still loose, it'll slot in and out, and I've done as much as I really want to do at this stage, but you can see it's looking really nice. I'm really pleased with how this has gone. There's this loose bit on the back here, but that gets fixed on during the covering stage once we've fitted the elevators. But that is a beast of a tail plane, isn't it? I mean, I really like the look of that. And we've also got the skid done, which is great. But I think before I draw this video to a close, I need to get the rest of the model out and see how this sits on that fuselage, because I haven't done that yet, and I think it's going to look good. So I'll get it set up now and we'll have a look. Well, my workshop is suddenly starting to feel a little bit too small. Seriously, it is absolutely great to get this set up and see how that tailplane and fin looks on the fuselage, and it gives you an idea of what a beast this plane is going to be. I haven't tried to balance it on the skid. That I didn't want to risk that, but just imagine this for a second. We've got a lovely turtle deck from the trailing edge of the wing coming down to meet that tailplane and the fin. We've got stringers coming down the fuselage to add extra dimension to this. It really is an absolutely lovely looking model. I feel dead excited to get this done, and can just envisage what it's going to look like. You may have noticed I haven't hinged the cut out and hinged the fin. I'm going to do that at a later date. Once I've made sure I've got the profile of this just how I want it. But it's going to be a simple process to put the hinges in, just how I did with the elevator. Anyway, I'm going to draw this video to a close now, and I hope you've enjoyed seeing this absolutely gorgeous Gladiator and how we've got that fin and rudder assembly fitted. Anyway, I hope you're as excited about this build as I am, and thanks very much for watching. Please come back, see how we get on in the next stage of this. I'm not sure what I'm going to do next. I need to give that some thought. Maybe get the front finished off before I start the turtle deck. Anyway, thanks very much for watching.